Today on Rates and Barrels, we have an update on Diamondbacks second baseman Ketel Marte. Max Fried returns to the IL just as Carlos Rodón returns to the Yankees rotation.
We check in with the two hottest teams in the West. That is the Astros with Chandler and the Padres with Dennis Lin.
And Pete Crow-Armstrong is at it again, a 2-homer game, including a walk-off against the White Sox as he continues to bolster his case for the NL MVP award. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Tuesday, August 18th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. Some show business as we get started. Eno, the meetup, Chicago, Friday, August 28th at Was Brewing, 7 o'clock start. I'm hoping your plane's on time for that one.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about moving it up. I'm going to look in that today.
Love it. Love that. And probably not up far enough for you to get from the West Coast to Chicago to make that matinee at Wrigley. That's a 1:20 start on Friday for the Cubs and Reds if you're trying to catch a game before the meetup. But a 7 o'clock start and $1 off your split squad taps if you mention the Rates and Barrels meetup at the bar that day. You can find us on Instagram now. Rates_barrels is the account. Lots of good stuff coming there in the near future. So tons of ground to cover today. Some baseball news you should know right off the top. People were surprised on Monday night when Ketel Marte was placed on the restricted list for a personal matter because he traveled with the team to Boston and then did not report to Fenway Park on Monday. You may have noticed something was afoot if you were watching for that D-backs lineup. It came out like 15 or 20 minutes before game time, which is very unusual. And there were some comments after the game from Torey Lovullo. He said, "We deal with a lot as baseball managers and coaches and teachers. So, sometimes you get disappointed, sometimes you get let down, but we're going to figure out how to work through this," which was kind of a strange quote because all indications were that Ketel Marte was, okay in the general sense. Diamondbacks lost that game 11-1. And then we learned on Tuesday morning from Nick Pecora of the Arizona Republic, Marte has returned to Arizona for an MRI on his knee. And he's had a knee issue that goes back at least 2 weeks. And most recently, he left Friday's game with some left knee soreness, trying to field a grounder in the first inning. He didn't play on Saturday, and he was back out there on Sunday, starting at second base, playing all 9 innings. So is it just an injury and nothing to see here? Maybe a situation where a player and team are just at odds about how healthy he is and whether or not he's actually well enough to play? Or do we only know part of the story at this point?
I mean, this is a real issue even beyond that, because let's say he feels he's not ready to play, then you come to the park and you communicate that, And I think it'd be really hard for a coaching staff to say, no, you've got to get out there to a player that comes in and says, I'm here, but my knee hurts and I don't think I should play tonight. Like, would Torey Lovullo, who obviously is a thinking, caring person, would he say, no, you throw some dirt on it, you got to get out there, right? No, he wouldn't. He would be like, all right, we can deal without you for a day. I think that's where Torey Lovullo is talking about being disappointed and getting let down. Is why would you not communicate with us? Why would you not call us and tell us what's happening? Come in, let us know what you're thinking. So there obviously was a gap in communication where they did not know when they put out the lineup really late. They did not know what was happening. We did not even know where Ketel was or if he was just going to show up late and still play that night. So that gap in communication, I have to put on the player. I have to put that on the player because no matter what he's feeling, you got to keep the lines of communication open. You got to come in and talk to them, even if you're mad. On the other hand, I have seen from players that are dealing with organizations where they have a different opinion about their health, and it's become very frustrating to the player. But with those players that I've talked to in the past, for the most part, they've just kept communicating. They just kept saying what they felt. They kept advocating for themselves. And though it might have been exhausting at times, and though they might have been sure that the organization was incorrect and was wrong and was doing the wrong thing, they still, did what they could, got their agents involved, involved, basically advocated for themselves. And it seems like Ketel is maybe frustrated that he has to do that, or there's some gaps here that we have to fill in. But there has to be, some of this has to be on the player. In the end, maybe it'll be cleaned up by finding out if there's an injury. Maybe he DHs the rest of the way. Tries to get off his knee a little bit. But there's obviously ongoing issues here, because we've also heard that the team was shopping him in the past. And he's on one of the most team-friendly contracts in baseball. And so it's a weird situation all around, and you have to kind of assume that some of this is on the player in terms of how he communicates, or how he deals with the team and interacts with them.
Yeah, I think we've seen a few instances in which Torey Lovullo's managed situations with Ketel Marte really well. We're not there in that clubhouse every single day, but I would give Torey the benefit of the doubt, given what we know about the broader relationship between at least him and Marte. So we'll see where it goes from here. Still a lot of time left on that deal, so maybe this winter will be the year that Ketel Marte ends up getting traded somewhere else. But for now, it just appears to be a knee injury at the root of all of this, which is better than it being something more severe. Some other injury news you should know. Max Fried is back on the IL with the elbow bone bruise that had shut him down for more than 2 months between May 13th and July 22nd. We saw 5 starts from Fried before this return to the IL, and there really weren't any major indications that something was bothering him in that stretch since coming back.
Yeah, I'm surprised now when I looked at Max Fried had an 87th percentile health grade coming into the season, just because he's missed, half seasons before. He doesn't strike me as, one of the healthiest pitchers. One of the things that happens with a bone bruise in the elbow is that, basically the ligament is pulling at the bone. I think that's the source of the bone bruise. It's not like he's slid on it, or there's not a impact injury. And so your ligaments can actually, that's how you can cause a stress fracture in your elbow. And a bone bruise is on the way to a stress fracture. So I'm assuming that the ligament's pulling at his bone a little bit there, and that's the cause of the injury. I don't know what the prognosis is. They seem to think that this is more management than something he has to go down for a long time, and maybe it is just a phantom IL. Maybe it is just but when you have something very, when it says inflammation, I feel like that's more of a phantom IL situation sometimes. It's everybody's inflamed, dude. They're hurting all the time. But this is a very specific prognosis that you'd want to see somewhere on a scan. So I don't know. I would say that this is bad news for the Yankees. It is good news for Will Warren, who keeps his job a little bit, because Carlos Rodón is being activated today. And there's some comings and goings. I think this is, from a team perspective, this is why you want to have 6 or 7 really good starting pitchers over the course, when you're planning for the season. And because over the course of the season, you're going to have these comings and goings. From a player analysis, I don't know. I just can't imagine that he'll have a great health grade next year. If I had to, guess what his health grade was next year, I would give him maybe something closer to, would it go so far as a Drew Rasmussen, a 72 percentile?
That's 3 major elbow surgeries on Rasmussen. A 72% seems high in that case. It
does. How about Jesus Luzardo has a 78th percentile?
Yeah, it's probably something in that range between the two at the very least, because as you mentioned, it's not the first time we've seen a lengthy absence for Fried. I think 2023 was the last time we had a extended absence kind of like this one, but a 29-8 strikeout to walk rate in 24 2/3 innings. Over 5 starts after coming back. One clunker against the White Sox, but 4 good starts otherwise. Just not really any indication of him being in a lot of pain by results anyway. I worry about the mechanism of the injury as you described it, though. How does that get better? How does the ligament stop pulling at the bone unless you go in there and do something with it? It just that doesn't seem like an easy thing to treat.
I think it's just a throwing heart injury, but I don't know. I mean, there are people who know a lot more about mechanics than I do. There might be something mechanically that you can fix.
By the way, Carlos Rodón, as you mentioned, activated. He will take the ball on Tuesday. Expectations for Rodón for this stretch run? Because he, I think, is a little more important now for the Yankees in this stretch without Fried.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. In terms of what he's done in the minor leagues is strike everyone out and not walk anyone, which is what you'd expect. So, I think that, sometimes his command is inconsistent. So you're a little bit worried that he comes off an injury and has to shake off the bad command. But the good news is that his command looked pretty good on the rehab. So, I'm expecting a high threes ERA or mid to high threes ERA with an above average strikeout rate, and just the occasional game where he can't command his fastball and he gets behind and he gets hit a little bit. That's just the Carlos Rodón story, I think.
Yeah, I think as long as the command is all the way back, he can be really effective down the stretch and into the postseason for the Yankees. Another big game for Pete Crow-Armstrong on Monday night, much to my chagrin as someone who traded him away earlier this year in a dynasty league. I think it's important to share these stats with the audience to let them know how incompetent I can be sometimes. Now, I have a co-manager, and we were both on board with this decision. This was not DVR anti-Cubs bias driving the decision. It was second half Pete Crow-Armstrong of last year plus first half up to the point of the trade. He looked like a league average sort of bat. That's what he was when we traded him. We made the trade back on June 2nd. So in the time since that trade, Pete Crow-Armstrong, 23 homers, 19 steals. He leads all major league hitters in WRC plus with a 197 during that span. So 2 more homers on Monday. The second was a walk-off. It's another 30-30 year for him, back-to-back seasons where he's done that, and the stretch run is on for PCA versus Ohtani, battling it out for that NL MVP award.
From July 13th last year to May 31st this year, Pete Crow-Armstrong had an 86 WRC plus.
This is why we traded him right there in a nutshell.
226, 293, 318 slugging. With a 6% walk rate, 25% strikeout rate, and this is in 501 plate appearances. I mean, I think that it does point to something like when you start to put together Vlad's last 600 plate appearances, right? And you kind of like when you cobble together halves of seasons and you take the last half of one and the first half of the other and you put them together temporally, that makes sense. But I don't know that makes, a lot of sense in terms of, judgment on the player. You could have a bad season that would just stick out on, just without doing the first half, second half splits and still be good or bad, after that, right? Like people have bad seasons, people have bad stretches. I think in his case, though, we were talking about a young player where you didn't have, with Vlad, you have a long track record of success. So you're saying he was really good for all this time, and then he had a bad season. With Pete Crow-Armstrong, you're like, well, he was really good for half a season or like a season and a half, and then he was really bad for a full season. So then it becomes a question of what is he really going forward? And I think that question is still to be really finalized, but it's been a great run since you traded him. In that game, Megan Montemuro wrote on Blue Sky that he added half a win of above replacement. Wins above replacement do not work where like you hit a walk-off, you get a full win. That's just not how it works. But adding a half a win in one game is really, really good. That has, $5-6 million of value to the team. It's one of those amazing games. I saw some people comparing it to the great Shohei Ohtani game that he had. So, it was and that's going to be who Pete Crow-Armstrong probably beats in the MVP race this year. So that's he's put himself in among the greats, and I just couldn't help but fanboy a little bit after that when I was watching that game, and I was like, I cannot believe that Pete Crow-Armstrong, who hit a homer in the game, has been great in this game, is going to come up with runners on in the 10th inning. Like I did the math and I was like, oh my God, he's going to do it. And then he did it. And that's actually one of the feelings I love the most about a player that is at their best, is that feeling of he's going to do something. Like I felt that with Barry in the late 90s and early 2000s. I felt that with Chipper Jones when I was a Braves fan coming up. Like there are these times where you're like, this guy's just going to do it. He's either going to walk or he's going to, walk him off, and that he's not going to do something bad here. And, PCA came through.
I think that describes a lot of players that play at that MVP level, because you just hit the upper echelon of what's possible in a particular year or a multi-year stretch in some cases. I felt that way when Christian Yelich was winning the NL MVP award. Like peak Yelich, you're like, hey, he's gonna barrel something up. This is gonna be a homer. It's gonna be an opposite field double, or it's gonna be first base for free. And you love stretches like that because guys are just completely locked in. I'm glad you mentioned Vlad Jr., though. I saw a note from Keegan Matheson, who covers the Blue Jays for MLB.com. Monday marked the 1-year anniversary since Vladimir Guerrero Jr. last hit a regular season home run at Rogers Center. It's just weird. There's been some weird stuff that has happened with hitters and with pitchers over the course of 2026. Things that will take a long time to explain, and some of those things will never be explained at all.
Yeah, I mean, I said, people swinging the bat as fast as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Fernando Tatis, the lowest amount of homers they've had in 650 plate appearances is 18. And I said, at the time when I said that, I said Tatis and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are going to make a run at that number. I do think Tatis has made the adjustment. He's going to get out of that, and he's going to hit 20 or so homers this year. It looks increasingly unlikely that Vlad will have that kind of stretch. So Vlad might break the new record. It's not a great record of fewest amount of homers by somebody who's swinging the bat faster than 76 miles an hour.
It's very strange. Past calendar year, 10 home runs for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., a 95 WRC plus. Other guys with 10 homers during that span: Andres Jimenez, Nico Horner, Ernie Clements got 9, Jung-Ho Lee's got 11, Mauricio Dubon's got 11. He doesn't belong anywhere near this part of the list.
He swings the bat fast, like 4 or 5 miles an hour faster than anybody on that list.
Yeah. Luke Keeschel, who we're always talking about in the Discord as a guy that doesn't have enough power, has 9 in the past calendar year. It's a strange development, but injuries are at least part of the story so far this year for Vlad Jr. as well. We're going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start a team-by-team breakdown of the AL West. Today, we're going to take a look at the AL West leading Astros with Chandler Rome. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. It's time to break down the AL West leading Houston Astros. And to do it, we bring on Astros writer from The Athletic, Chandler Rome. Chandler, thank you so much for joining us today. Did you think the Astros would be at this position in the standings on the 18th of August based on where we were just 3 months ago?
Not in a million years. And to be quite frank, I don't really know how they're doing this. I have ideas. Obviously, they have the best hitter in baseball hitting second for them every day. That helps. Their bullpen, I don't think, has gotten near enough credit for what it's done since May 1st. Only the Red Sox have a lower bullpen ERA since May 1st than the Astros. Obviously, Josh Hader has been wonderful at the back end of their bullpen. Brian Abreu, they've really rescued him after he had a pretty terrible April. But this is a very top-heavy team to the point where if Yordan Alvarez, Isaac Paredes, and Jeremy Pena aren't hitting, if Hunter Brown's not pitching like an ace, and if those two guys at the back end of the bullpen are not pitching well, it's really hard for them to function. And you've seen it in some stretches. Jeremy Pena right now is in like a 5 for 50 funk. Yordan Alvarez has homered once in his last 16 games, and it's been a grind for them. They're winning somehow. It's helped that they've had a pretty soft schedule in the last couple weeks, but they need their superstars to play like superstars. And if that doesn't happen, they do not have enough depth to overcome that. Yeah,
you mentioned Hunter Brown. One of the things that the Astros have done since the beginning of the season, you mentioned the relief corps, but also the starting staff. They're the biggest ERA improvers. The Angels and the Astros have improved their ERA a run since April and May. So they're the biggest ERA improvers as a staff in baseball. Hunter Brown is part of that. I mean, he's gone for the beginning part. He's been better since he's been good and since he's been back, but it's not fully Hunter Brown. It's not the Hunter Brown of old. What's happened to his fastball command? Have you talked to him about his fastball command, or is it just injury related, or is it his old command problems kind of coming back? What's going on with that bit?
Yeah, he really hasn't had it since he came off the injured list. And he came off the injured list in early June. I think it's worth remembering that Hunter Brown literally had never been injured before he had the shoulder strain. I think there's always been, like, no one's really said it out loud, but like Hunter's like figuring this out on the fly, like how to rehab and how to recover and then how to come back from an injury. It's just uncharted territory for him. He's never done this. The weird thing is, like, his fastball command will be there. It comes and goes a lot. And he talked about early on, it was about just timing. Like, his upper half wasn't timed with his lower half. He was getting behind the ball and he wasn't able to, really command it through the zone. He had a start in Chicago against the White Sox a couple of weeks ago. It was his best start of the season and just commanded everything, was around the zone. And he said he finally fixed it then. But ever since, it's been really just very inconsistent. In his last start, he threw 23 four-seam fastballs and only 3 were a called strike or a swing and a miss. The Mariners swung at 30 of the 90 pitches he threw on Sunday. Like, no one's swinging against him. His swing rate is almost 5 percentage points below his career average. And he said after the Sunday game, like, why would you swing against me? I can't throw my fastball in the zone. So I think part of it's mechanical. I think he's just got to get his mechanics timed up. I don't think it's a lingering part of the injury. I mean, the velo is still great. The secondary stuff looks good. I don't think it's a stuff issue. I just think he has not been as locked in with his mechanics this season as you saw him last year. And I think certainly being out for 2 months and maybe having to compensate for some things, I think maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I wonder too, like, when Hunter Brown had everything kind of click partway into 2024, I want to say it was like May, he turned that season around, and it looked a lot from May on like the guy we saw throughout 2025. The top of the zone with the fastball, I think the two-seamer in particular became really important for him to unlock everything. And knowing that the zone is different this year, I wonder if you layer that on top of the injury issues, never being hurt before, like, you put those factors together and suddenly you pull him back, 2+ years in terms of what he's been able to accomplish as a pitcher.
Yeah, don't. And no one wants to hear excuses like this. It's August 18th. The Astros, like, they're in a pennant race. Like, the excuses don't matter anymore. But don't discount ABS in this. What ABS has done to the strike zone, especially at the top rail of the strike zone, where Hunter Brown, that's where his four-seamer lives. Like, he's a fastball up, four-seamer up, two-seam in the righties. Like, yeah, the ABS system has been a struggle, I think, for the entire Astros pitching staff, and maybe in pitching staffs across baseball, to really adjust to ABS. And I think Hunter has talked about it before. He doesn't want to use it as an excuse, so he doesn't mention it a ton. But yeah, you cannot discount what ABS is here. But I will say this at the same time, like, I mean, his start against the Mariners, some of his fastball misses were not close. Like, it's not a matter of ABS or like anything like this wouldn't have been a called strike even in the past strike zone. So I think all of that is kind of coalescing into making, Hunter this. But it's been interesting to watch him navigate this post-injury time period, just because, again, he's never been through this before.
Before last year or before this year, you would have said Brian Abreu is a future closer. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And he was, 97, 98, lights out, great reliever. Then beginning of the season, he lost all his velo. There was the Knicks trade for Trevor Larnach. I mean, he's had a weird ass season.
Yes.
He's got some of his velocity back, but not fully. Was it ever an explanation for that?
It was all delivery. I mean, obviously, like, it wasn't just that he didn't have velocity. Like, the decline was precipitous. Like, he was throwing 91, 92 as a guy that's like usually 96, 97. And of course, like we all kind of thought he was hurt at the beginning of the year, but he's fully healthy, and it was just, he was flying open. His delivery was so out of whack. And I think he tried a lot of things to compensate for his delivery being so out of whack. Like the coaches caught him trying to, adjust his slider grip without telling anyone. And they were like, they caught it on Edgertronic cameras and were like, no, you don't need to do this. Like you still have it. It's still in there. Like don't try to reinvent the wheel, I think is what Ethan Katz, the assistant pitching coach, told him. And they added a cutter that he feels comfortable just kind of gripping like a four-seam and throwing in zone. He's never been a command guy. Like he's always been a chase guy, right? Even at his peak, like he is a guy that relies a lot on chase. I hate to bring ABS back into this, but ABS is limiting how much guys swing and chase. And I think Brian Abreu had a difficult time adjusting to that. But the one interesting thing that they did with him, they made him stop throwing on flat ground. They said, you are not doing any more work on flat ground. We want to do everything between your outings. We want to do on the bullpen mound, because they wanted to simulate game-like. They put standing dummies in the left-handed batter's box. They made sure, because his delivery was so out of whack, that they were like, we need to get this on the slope, on the mess, so you can feel kind of where you're flying open and the adjustments that we're asking you to make. And I think that has helped a lot, the fact that he's just not on flat ground anymore. He likes to throw. He's a guy that likes to throw between his outings, and they're doing it all on the bullpen mound. I think part of it, the fact that they never lost, obviously, like they took him out of leverage roles pretty quickly because they had to, but there was never a thought of, do they DFA him? Because look, that was a real question in April. This guy had a 14 ERA. It was to a point where like it was either time to fake IL him or to find a way to get him off the roster, because he was unpitchable. Like they couldn't even pitch him in mop-up games. But they stuck behind him. They picked him up, and it's not perfect. His last two outings have been a little bit shaky, but you can't argue with the results. He's got like a 1.9 ERA since May. They fixed his delivery. The cutters helped him to get back in the zone a lot. He's never going to be a command guy first and foremost, but the fact that they have gotten him back to where he is usable in leverage spots is, it's a real godsend for this team, because they needed him.
Health has been a big problem for the rotation throughout the year, right? Peter Lambert has been a really pleasant surprise. And I guess the thing I've wondered about, now that they've got Hayden Wesneski back and they've got Christian Javier back, how do they line up starters behind Hunter Brown? If we look ahead, if this team is in the postseason, if they're playing a full series, how do you order their starters after Hunter Brown at this point?
I don't really think they know. Peter Lambert is obvious. He's been incredible, but he's coming up on a workload that he's never had before. I think they're really going to have to look at his workload. But he's still pitching okay as of now. But his workload is going to be a real question going forward. And then after that, it's really going to be who are they playing, who's rested, who's pitching well. Like they are really riding the hot hand right now, because I think if you ask me right now, Hayden Wesneski probably starts a third game, but he just got lit up by the Mariners, who haven't hit at all for 3 months. He got lit up in his third start back from TJ. And they've already optioned Ronel Blanco to AAA Sugarland, because he was a mess. He had allowed 20 earned runs in 22 innings coming off of Tommy John. They only trust Christian Javier and Tetsuya Imai to get through a lineup twice, if that. So Joe Espada is really running like bullpen games every time these guys pitch. And it's where is the best time to get the bulk from Javier and Imai? And sometimes it's not at the beginning of the game. They used an opener in front of Imai a couple of starts ago. They have passed over Tetsuya Imai to start prospect Ethan Pecko on Wednesday to make his major league debut. That should just kind of show you where he stands in their hierarchy. It's a mess. It is a mess, and they really need someone to just stabilize it. I don't know if it's Javier. I don't know if it's going to be Pecko or Imai. Wesneski was on his way to doing that, but again, he had a clunker in his fourth start back. Maybe that was just an anomaly, but they don't have much beyond Hunter Brown and Peter Lambert. And it's really going to come down to matchups and, quite frankly, who has been pitching the best that week.
Yeah, I think the idea with Pecko seems to be that he got a wide arsenal, decent command. He has innings left, and maybe he can pitch them deep into a game. I did not get this to you before, but we are looking right now at his minor league stuff plus numbers and location plus. What I see here is, he's got a couple pitches that work against opposite hands. The cutter and the slider look like they can work. He's got 5 pitches. It looks like he has command of most of those pitches. One thing I'm wondering about is, I don't know if there's an out pitch, if there's like an elite out pitch. Does that ring true with anything you've heard about Pecko, or what have you heard about Pecko coming up?
In general, talking to, rival scouts, they've got like a 4 or 5 starter kind of grade on him. That one scout in particular did say like he would be better served to spend this entire year in the minor leagues just to like really get himself ready. But they have no choice at this point. Like, he is one of their last lines of defense, and they have no choice but to turn to him. I think it's worth noting with Ethan Pecko that when the Astros drafted him, he threw 2 pitches. He now throws 5. It is a true player development success story with him. I mean, this is a guy that he was at LaSalle as a college freshman, had Tommy John, and then LaSalle axed their baseball program. And he goes to Towson. he goes to Towson.
Where am I playing next year?
Right. And this is all in the middle of COVID too.
Wow.
Right. Goes to Towson, pitches for 2 years at Towson, is a 6th-round pick of the Astros with 2 pitches, and now, he's going to be a big leaguer. I mean, it's a player development success no matter what he does in the start on Wednesday or going forward. But, from what I have gleaned, I have not seen him pitch in person, I don't think ever, so I don't want to, speak with authority, but, it's pitchability. It's, he knows how to command, knows how to pitch. He's not going to get rattled by the big stage, by the third deck, things like that. But, as I've said on my podcast, this is not Hunter Brown in 2022 forcing his way to the big leagues with a sub-2 ERA in AAA.
No, it is not.
And it's no disrespect to Ethan, who has earned this and who has put himself in a position to be a big leaguer, but it's not overwhelming stuff. I think he can run it up to 96, 97 if he has to, but it's kind of from a low slot. Again, it's pitchability over stuff, and I think they hope that he's around the strike zone and that he can be as just unpredictable enough. And it helps. This is as soft as landing spot as you can get. He's going to pitch against the Angels at home, so you can't get many softer landing spots than that when you're putting a kid in the middle of a playoff race.
For the record, his ERA in AAA is 4.94.
Yeah, hitter-friendly league, though. Hitter-friendly league.
That's true.
That's what you got to tell yourself when you promote someone with a ERA close to 5. Hitter-friendly league. A lot of high-altitude parks down there. One more question for you, Chandler. I mean, Yordan Alvarez is making a run at a Triple Crown, right? Leads the AL in homers with 36, leads the AL in RBI with 88, hitting .321. That also leads the AL by a pretty decent margin. Chandler Simpson second at .309 right now. I don't think people realize the Astros are tied for 5th as a team in WRC Plus with a 105, but when so much of that comes from one player, and we see this with the Yankees a lot with Aaron Judge putting up just absurd video game numbers on an annual basis. If something were to happen to Yordan again, what's the quality of the supporting cast around him, given what you've seen over the course of this year? And Jeremy Pena has been hurt a lot, so that's been part of the story. Maybe that's part of why he's slumping right now. Cam Smith seems like he's going through some growing pains. How do you grade the non-Yordan hitters in this lineup and their ability to hold up against high-level pitching?
Not great. Astros enter today, their position player group. So there's 28 that have accumulated WAR according to Baseball Reference. Their position player group has produced 16.5 BWAR according to Baseball Reference. Yordan Alvarez, Jeremy Pena, and Isaac Paredes are responsible for 11.2 of the 16.5 BWAR. If those guys are not hitting, it is very, very hard for this team to function offensively. The disparity between, I think if you look at splits from what lineups are getting from spots 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and 7 through 9, obviously the Astros lead baseball in OPS from lineup spots 1 through 3. 4 through 6 and 7 through 9, I think they're 20th and 18th respectively, or 23rd and 18th respectively. Like, this is as top heavy of a lineup as you can have. And I think you're seeing it lately. Jeremy Pena is in like a 5 for 40 something funk. Yordan Alvarez has homered once in his past 16 games.
Cam Smith is hot.
Cam Smith is hot, but they have to. They're protecting him a little bit because he got worn down so easily last year that he didn't play on Sunday against the Mariners. Like they're having to kind of monitor his workload a little bit. But again, like, they need someone. You know, Jose Altuve is. I think you're seeing maybe the beginning of the back end of Jose Altuve's career. Still been about a league average hitter, but certainly not been the Altuve that you're accustomed to seeing. Christian Walker's got a 630 OPS in the past 3 months. Dalton Varsho has been next to nothing offensively since the Astros acquired him. And then they've tried 11 different left fielders this year. They've tried 8 different center fielders. Like they don't, there's just not a ton of consistency below those 3. So how would I rate them? Not great, but I mean, look, Cam Smith has the ability to be that dynamic kind of changing, like, lineup altering force. You know, Christian Walker was really good in the first half of this season. Jose Altuve is still Jose Altuve. Like, I don't think he's forgotten how to hit. So it's there, but they have just not shown anything beyond those top 3. It's going to be and that's what worries me about a playoff series. When these guys get into a playoff series is, what's stopping the other team from just saying, look, we're giving Yordan nothing to hit? And look, to be fair, opponents have done that since May with the Astros. Like, I mean, since Alvarez has been on this run, like, he's not getting much to hit. And it really, really, really puts the onus on other guys to figure this out. And to this point, they just have not had that consistently at all.
Yeah, it feels like it could be just good enough if everybody's healthy and hitting at the higher end of their like projected ranges, but that's putting a lot on some things that are very unlikely to all happen at once. Chandler, we appreciate your time and your insight today. Thanks as always for joining us.
All right. Thanks, guys.
It's Chandler Rome. You can check out his written work at The Athletic covering the Astros and check out the Crush City Territory podcast as well. We're going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we're going to move over to the NL side. We're going to talk about the San Diego Padres who hold the number 6 spot in the National League entering play on Tuesday. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. We go further west now. We're going to talk to Dennis Lin, the Padres writer for The Athletic. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. This Padres team, if the playoffs started today, would be the number 6 seed in the NL, but just a 1-game lead ahead of the Diamondbacks. And they've been fortunate by Pythagorean record, just looking at run differential. This is a 500 team that's actually played about 4 wins above that up to this point. And I guess the first question we have for you is, how have they been able to get these bats right? Because the last time we checked in on this team with a deep dive, things were not going well for Tatis and Merrill and Machado, and they have looked a lot better over the past 2.5 months.
Well, number one, I think it's Tatis hitting the ball over the fence instead of just hitting it into the ground, as Eno knows. But Jackson Merrill has been great since pretty much the All-Star break. Going back before that, actually, you're seeing Manny Machado kind of revert to his pre-July numbers recently. So that's keeping it down a little bit. But, you know, Ty France has been great the entire season. The offense generally is hitting the fastball a lot better in the second half. So I think some of this is a small sample product of a easier schedule. They played some bad teams coming out of the break. But overall, I think just the talent on this team was not going to be held down for as long as it was. They were probably getting a little unlucky on the offensive side, and especially Tatis. And then Jackson Merrill just coming back to more of who he was as a rookie. That's been a huge development for a team that really doesn't have a lot of levers to pull on offense if the guys like Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado are continuing to decline just as they get into their mid-30s. But overall, I would say this offense is maybe somewhere in between what we've seen the second half of the season and the first half. So not, world beater, but also not the worst in the league.
You speaking of levers that they can pull on the offensive end, there is one big lever in AAA. He's got a 20% better than league average line. He's 20 years old. His name is Ethan Salas. Is there room on this roster for him? Where would he fit in?
Yeah, definitely in September. I think there's definitely room. Before then would be interesting because Luis Camposano is hitting like the Padres always hoped he would. Freddie Fermin has been better, and he's their best defensive catcher. So throw in a guy who's 20 years old who was basically missed all of last season with a back injury would be a big risk in a playoff race. But at the same time, Ethan Salas, if he wants to be on a playoff roster, the Padres have to add him by September 1st to the 40-man roster. I mean, they can petition the commissioner's office if they, put him on the 40-man after that. But I think, if you just look at the left-handed bat, maybe some ways to not overexpose him early on. And this is definitely a team that's leaned very aggressive over the years, as we've seen with promotions. I mean, this is a guy they were talking about promoting by the time he was 18 when he first got signed out of, Venezuela. So he's behind schedule, so to speak. But I think just the underlying numbers that you're seeing in AAA right now, I know that's also a small sample, but he's kind of killing it right now. So I think they could use him against some certain right-handed pitchers. He's caught Joe Musgrove, who should be coming back pretty soon. He's really good behind the plate. So I think there are ways, especially in September, and especially after the AAA season ends, that they'd like to get his feet wet and hopefully not overexpose him because they have a pretty good thing going on right now with their two catchers.
Yeah, is there a realistic path for this rotation to get completely healthy at just the right time? They added Casey Mize and Robbie Ray at the trade deadline, so that gives them a little bit of buffer. But where do things stand with Musgrove? Where do things stand with Nick Pivetta? Because those two guys in particular make this rotation look a lot different if they can get back.
Yeah, with Musgrove, I think you could see him this coming homestand, basically back in the majors for the first time in 2 years, which for the Padres would be pretty big boost just to have that kind of fourth, fifth option in the rotation. Casey Mize has been pretty good, kind of as advertised since he gave up like 9 runs in his debut, which I think you can chalk up to some just his routine being out of whack, kind of a new team and everything. And then Robbie Ray, I think that's more of a question because, as you guys probably seen, his stuff is down quite a bit this year. Not throwing as hard, and just the underlying numbers aren't as promising. But over what they had, this kind of pitching chaos thing that they're trying to emulate the 2024 Tigers in without Tarek Skubal, that's probably like the worst thing you can do. Except it was working for a couple weeks against some bad teams again. But the rotation overall, with Casey Mize and Robbie Ray in there, just some stability, veteran stability, and then Joe Musgrove, who was throwing 97 in his last AAA rehab start, which is kind of eye-catching for a guy who hasn't thrown 97 in basically a decade. I think that overall is just a huge upgrade over what they had. It's maybe not the best potential playoff rotation, but given what they have at the back of the bullpen and even the middle of the bullpen, you can kind of make up for that in September and October.
Yeah, they got some weird health things going on. I mean, that's good news from Joe Musgrove, but the Nick Pivetta, I don't understand what's happening with him. And then is Mason Miller okay? Like, why did they go to Bradley Rodriguez for that save in Cleveland? And, if you're looking on YouTube, you can see, Mason Miller's vertical movement on his fastball is down. Is there any buzz around Mason Miller's health right now?
I think he was used pretty heavily early on in the season, and then there was a stretch where he wasn't being used pretty much at all. I mean, that's hyperbole, but it's been kind of a weird season usage-wise for him. And then more recently, until he's had some, more deliberate rest, built-in rest that Craig Stammen has given him, he's been going like a day on, a day off, day on, day off. At some point, that does add up maybe for a guy who throws as hard as he does. So I'm not sure there. I think he's mostly fine. And then Bradley Rodriguez, he's like a top 3 reliever already in baseball by some metrics. So they feel good about throwing him out there and testing him. He got his first save the other day. But he's also 22 with a history of elbow trouble, and he's been pitching 2 innings in a lot of these outings recently. So that's a little bit concerning. But I think, yeah, they have the guys at the back of the bullpen. It's just, who's on and who's not. Mason Miller maybe just a little off right now, but at the same time, he's still I think people would agree, the best reliever in baseball still. So I don't think there's too much concern there. It's just they're hoping to get Jason Adam back at some point in September, and then If they can get maybe David Morgan back up from AAA, I think this bullpen's in pretty good shape. It's just you do wonder with how much these guys have been used throughout the season, especially like a guy like Adrian Morejon. Is there some cumulative effect that eventually is going to catch up to them?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Cleveland bullpen, just in terms of quality and depth, but also usage. And you worry that year over year, you take trips to October, especially, you pay for it at some point. And if you're leaning more heavily on that group down the stretch, especially, I feel like you could be redlining at the absolute worst time. Dennis, one last question for you. As you look up and down this roster, they've patched up a few holes with really kind of unheralded veterans like Ty France and Luis Rengifo most recently. Austin Hayes just got brought into the roster in the last couple of weeks. Like, who do you think some of the glue guys are on this team that are going to prove to be like more important than people realize, just based on how this team is put together?
I think you just named all the candidates pretty much. Ty France has been arguably the MVP of the team all season. He was the Gold Glove at first base in the American League last year, and this year he just seems to hit the ball hard whenever he swings at it or makes contact. So I think Ty France will be a big guy who's involved in potential playoff run. He appeared in the World Series last year for the Blue Jays. There's not a lot of guys on this roster who've played in the World Series outside of Walker Buehler and Xander Bogaerts, who I don't know if anyone's counting on either of those guys to be a big contributor down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like the last few years with the kind of the spending restrictions that Padres had, they still have a big payroll, but like AJ Preller's been able to take a lot of these shots. A lot of them don't work out. Some of them are just like, why did they even bother with this guy? And then some of them I guess when you take enough shots, enough of them land. And I think, Ty France and Rengifo are two big guys because, Rengifo is a switch hitter and he could play multiple positions. And I guess with the Angels, he would always get hot in the second half and the Padres happen to pick him up at the right time, I guess. And then Ty France, I think, he's a guy who's been batting cleanup in this order with like multiple guys making hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of their contracts, and he's making 1.3. So I think if you're looking at the salary breakdown, those are two of the guys that I expect to kind of be the ones to potentially carry them or help carry them at least in September.
Yeah, France has that reputation for being a great defender, from winning a Gold Glove. You see it on a regular basis. He looks great at first base. That's been a really good pickup all around for this club. Dennis, thank you so much for the time today. We appreciate your time and your insight. We look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
It's Dennis Lin. He covers the Padres for The Athletic. We didn't get a chance to talk about this with Dennis, but on Monday night, the Padres had a few rough sends from their third base coach. And I think if you haven't learned by now, you certainly know after Monday night, do not test the arm of Carson Benge in right field.
Yeah, Bob Henley did not have a good day. 4 Padres thrown out at the plate in 2 innings in a 2-1 defeat. I do not think he slept well last night. He is a proud owner of a ring. In fact, he got a ring with the Washington Nationals, and I think it was his history with the Nationals that led to him being hired by Craig Stammen, interestingly enough, because they overlap there in Washington. But, I talked to a coach about these different sends, basically. One of the 4 was not really a send. Basically, what happened on one of the 4 was a ground ball to the pitcher with less than 2 outs and a guy on third. And I think the guy on third just broke for home. It was a decision by the runner to ball on the ground, I can score, that sort of deal. He got forced out at home. So there's 3 sends or 3 runners that are kind of coming around the base and heading to home, and that got thrown out in 2 innings. But not all of them are the same. The first one, it's less than 2 outs. So when you and it's a single, and what you should know before the game is that Carson Benge has a rocket for an arm. You should know this. It's a knowable fact. It's on Savant leaderboards. So that was the worst send of them all. You send the runner, and Carson Benge throws a 99-mile-an-hour seed to throw him out at the plate. after that one, the second one was actually not as bad. It might be hard to believe that, but actually, and we had a little bit of maybe a slight difference of opinion on this one, because with 2 outs, the math says you send a guy if it's anywhere close to 50-50. But when I said that to you, you said, well, was it really, what did you say? Was it really 50-50? I mean,
I think after seeing the arm, if you forgot the report or you saw something when the first one happened, you made that send, I feel like you'd be a little more skittish on the second one. you just lived it. You just touched the hot pot on the stove, and now you're going to touch it again. Like you just verified about 5 minutes ago that it was pretty hot. So don't do it again. Here's the trivia question:
3.5 on the second throw.
103.5. He's like, oh, you're going to run on me again? It's like it got him mad. It's probably just the way the ball came in, but he was able to get a little more behind it. Nevertheless, who are the top 5 outfielders in throwing strength, velocity this season? Top 5. I bet you can get 3 out of the 5. We're talking about one. You got one freebie.
What?
You got one freebie. We're talking about one right now.
You're right. Carson Benge.
Benge is in the top 5. 96 miles per hour on average on those throws.
And then I'm going to throw in Yoenis Cespedes.
What?
He has an awesome arm. I don't know. Andy Pages.
Andy Pages is top 15. Not bad. Oh, come on. There's a two-way player in college that you liked a lot for his bat coming into the season.
Oh,
he's number 1.
Jack Caglianone?
Jack Caglianone's number 1.
He's number 1. Yeah, former pitcher. That's a good one.
Number 2 has been hurt a lot this year, is unrefined tools is the way I would describe his defensive ability. The defensive metrics do not like this player, but he's number 2 in arm strength.
Jordan Walker?
He just came back.
No, he's not. He wasn't been hurt.
Jordan Walker's a good answer. He's number 6.
Oh. Who are you talking about?
Does not have a good defensive reputation.
And he's been hurt.
He just got activated on Monday.
Is it like Teoscar or something?
No. O'Neal Cruz.
O'Neal Cruz. He does have an arm. He has a howitzer. That is true. That's the best thing you can say about him is defensively. In fact, the word out of Pittsburgh is, should he DH?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that changes the equation a little bit. That's probably a good idea because Jake Mangum's pretty good in center field. So,
but you would be losing that arm. You feel like they could use that arm somewhere. Maybe Brian Reynolds DHs.
The thing about a great arm is you got to be able to make the play to get the ball to use the arm. And that has unfortunately been a bit of a challenge.
Top 5? Who did I miss?
Cole Carrig is number 3. And Petey Halpin is back in the mix.
Oh, Mr. Petey. I love that Cole Carrig is in there because there is some shot that he's the shortstop for the team next year.
Yeah. Which is good because it opens up a spot in the outfield where they have a bit of a crowd, a bunch of guys that we like that aren't quite good enough to force the issue. So if you can alleviate that by maybe saying goodbye to Ezekiel Tovar or making him a bench player, then more goodness for that group of outfielders. But yeah, rough night for Bob Henley to say the least. And those are the types of games the Padres usually win, right? I think that's part of the recipe. How do you beat your Pythagorean record, which again is based on your runs scored versus your runs allowed? You beat that by not making mistakes, by playing clean defense, by having an electric bullpen that can just shut people down.
Winning the one-run games that they're supposedly a bunch of noise, but like maybe you can dial that in a little bit.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of noise in there, but I think there are certain types of teams that are more susceptible to doing a little better in those games over a long period of time. It's kind of like the stat you mentioned with the Brewers hitters being abnormally clutch over the last several years, right? Like there's something there. It's not a complete fluke, but there might be downside elsewhere from having an approach like that. So interesting times in San Diego. We'll see if they can hold on to that final playoff spot. Should be a pretty good battle, though, between the D-backs and the Phillies and the Padres for those last 2 spots. And maybe a few other teams could creep up into the mix. We need to go. A few reminders as we leave. You can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Go to the mailbag channel. Drop us some questions for a future episode. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.